Hello, folks. Welcome to another edition of Burning Platform. Real pleasure to have my friend Dion Hinchcliffe from Constellation today. He is a wizard at digital transformations, future of work, and God knows what else. And he's also very, very good with visuals. I mean, he's one of the best analysts when it comes to creative presentation of complex ideas. Dion, welcome. I'm looking forward to this. The topic today is, digital transformations have been not a sprint, they're a marathon, right? So we're going to talk about how do we sustain digital transformations? A lot of companies are exhausted and giving up, right? So how do we sustain it? But Dion, before we start off, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
How are the twins and how is your everyday carry bag? I know you're not traveling much, but you're always acquiring a whole bunch of new digital technologies. So start off with, give me a personal update.
So things are good. It's my 5th year at Constellation Research now. The twins are 6 years old, and they've been learning how to ski this season. They're getting really good at it.
Wow.
My carry bag has ever smaller drones and amazing 360-degree cameras, and I keep upgrading it. And I think we'll be traveling. I think you and I will be traveling a bit more this year. So I hope.
Well, I look forward to you opening up your bag again. You're just full of goodies. You're Mr. Santa Claus.
You did a whole blog post on it. So for those who want to see how many electronics and gadgets I get into my bag, look up Vinnie's blog post where there's a picture.
I will. I'll link to that. So,
Sure.
So Dion, let's start off with your broad definition of digital transformation. I know you pulled up a slide, so let's talk about that, and then we can go into the whole sustenance part.
Yeah, so I think it's really important to distinguish digital transformation from things like digitization and automation. Those are things we've been doing for 40 to 50 years in our organizations, and they're really important, and we're still going to do those things, but they're not enough to move us into the future. And basically, digitization, automation takes what we do in our businesses today, makes it faster, more efficient, cheaper. Digital transformation is rethinking your business in terms of the art of the possible, the digital art of the possible. And that's rethinking your business models, what markets you serve, how you even think about your business, what adjacent businesses that digital technology gets you into. And it opens up major avenues for growth and sustainability of your organization, because what most things that most companies are doing today won't survive into the future in their present state, or even close. So digital transformation is it has to feel disruptive. It doesn't have to cover your whole business, but it should feel disruptive at the time that you're really changing some part of what you're doing and rethinking it in terms of what you can do and what you will be able to do in the future. That's what tech companies do. They design products for the way people are going to be in 5 years, not the way they are today. And that's the same thing with digital transformation. It takes so long, you really have to be designing for the future.
And what better opportunity than what the pandemic has opened up, right? I mean, you talk about business model changes, customer facing changes, new product opportunities. The pandemic's really opened up. I mean, look at healthcare, like telemedicine, been around for 20 years. Suddenly, healthcare executive told me, he says, we've been trying for 20 years. We couldn't get more than 2% outpatient visits to go to telemedicine. Within 3 months, we were up to 50%, right? So there have been some dramatic opportunities, or last mile delivery, distance learning in higher education. There have just been phenomenal opportunities to truly transform how, like you say, do something disruptive. What are you seeing?
I'm seeing much the same. The two major areas where digital transformation happened almost overnight, or just in a couple months, was in digital workplace. So making workers remote and making them productive remote. We did that in a very short amount of time, and the same thing with customer experience. You talked about telehealth, Vinnie, but things like mortgage processing. Any mortgage company that wasn't entirely digital was losing customers. They were calling me up saying, I have to have digital signatures and I need to do it in a month, or we're seeing we're seeing double-digit losses in our share of market. So there was a big scramble, and it showed that we could do it, that we could get the tech intensity to change much faster. And so what 2020 and a little bit of 2021 taught us was that we could transform faster than we thought. We could if the will was there. And so that's given a lot of people more courage to do more of what's here on the slide.
And you say if you have the courage to do it. I found someone like Chick-fil-A, for example, right? They had been building up to it. So they had some infrastructure like 2-lane drive-throughs. Without that, they would not have been able to scale during the pandemic, right? So I think the slight difference I would have is companies who've been preparing for big disruption seem to accelerate it. And there are some that still haven't really gotten there, right? So what do you think?
I would very much agree. Organizations that had a low digital maturity and a poor technology posture were caught flat-footed. So those that didn't have a lot of cloud, they were the ones that were scrambling the most. And we talked to a couple of hundred CIOs during that time, and the forward looking ones that had made more investments in the cloud, more investments into modern data technologies, had a stronger foundation. They didn't get disrupted as nearly as hard as some of these older organizations that had really been spending as little as they can on technology. They had aging laptops. They were not in a good, they had creaky VPNs, older era ways of connecting, and they're the ones that struggled. So I agree. We see, my research in fact shows that if you have a lot of technical debt and you have been underinvesting in IT for years, and you don't have the nimble ability to deliver using the cloud, you will have a challenge in transforming. You will go significantly slower.
Another restaurant example, been fascinating to see how last mile delivery firms, right? The DoorDashes and so on, are starting to threaten the restaurants. They become the front of the customer, so they become the channel master. So it's been interesting to see Domino's come out and kind of push back and say, hey, I'm going to give free cards to other small restaurants. The enemy is these last mile delivery firms. So it's kind of funny to see how the push and pull where the channel, the control of the customer is becoming so important.
Well, there's this real disintermediation happening. It's happened, in taxis and food delivery and shopping now. Things have changed so much that I'm a busy guy like you, Vinnie. I don't have time to really go shopping. So there's these new subscription services that they look at my Amazon account, they see what things, they suggest products, they learn from me, and then they send me a shipment of the latest gadgets and outdoor gear. They don't even ask me; they just send it. They're so confident. I don't have to worry about staying up to date, or I don't have to worry about shopping. It just arrives. I can send back anything I want to, but I never have yet, right? So we're seeing this. Everything's being inverted in very interesting ways. But I think there's a really key point here on this slide that I think is worth walking through and debating with you, Vinnie. And what we saw in the 20th century was this real drive for efficiency, and everything became super lean. And things weren't designed for innovation; they were optimized for efficiency. So we had these silos. That's on the left of the slide. There was marketing specialty, sales specialties. There was an operations team and delivery team that actually delivered the product or service, and then there was support. And those were all siloed experiences, and a customer was thrown over the wall. Like the marketing people don't like to talk to the salespeople, right? The salespeople are a very different culture, a very different attitude, and they're an entirely different group. And IT is often in its own building or on its own floor. But they did that to get real efficiencies in what they were doing because they didn't have another way of doing it. But now the most important boundary in business is experience, the customer experience, the employee experience, and the partner experience. That's where the actual value is delivered across that boundary. And that's become the most important thing. And so in the new experience economy, where everything's focused on how we're going to use digital tools, all work is almost all digitized now. Right? I don't do hardly any work off a computer, and most people don't either. There's still some manufacturing, but even that's being entirely automated, right? And so we have the customers, we have the supplier and partner experience. And so those are the three value streams, the most important value streams, and that's what we're going to organize around. I see it now. We're stopping organization around these silos, and more we're saying, how do I create a customer experience across my entire organization? I'm going to have a chief customer officer, and they're going to focus on that. I'm going to have a chief people officer who's focused on the employee experience, And I have a chief supply chain officer who's focused on that. Those are becoming. I track this on LinkedIn. I'm actually looking at these changes, and that's the model we're going to go to. Even if the titles don't change, we're going to be focused on these three value streams. That's what digital transformation. That's what the object is around customer experience, around employee experience, and our supplier experience.
Dion, you said we'd debate about this. I don't disagree with the huge importance of experience. My experience with technology vendors, they define experience very narrowly, what they can control. So it translates into UX, right? And UX is only a small part of the overall experience, right? If things break down, you need people to jump through hoops to be able to deliver that, make up for that experience, right? And so sometimes I wonder if people are thinking about the broader experience, not just the technology part of experience.
I agree with you. And as you say, the very first thing here is omnichannel. It's got to be across, the customer experience has to be coherent and consistent across all your channels. We call this the 51st dates problem. Every time you talk to a different part of the organization, they have to learn who you are and what you got turned on and working with somebody different. And it creates just a lot of friction. We have to, the companies that remove that friction and however the customer wants to be serviced. And the problem is omnichannel now means dozens of channels, right? You have to, if you talk to a young person, if they have insurance, car insurance, and they get into an accident, the last thing they want to do is call someone on the phone. They want to get onto social media and talk to the insurance company who does not want to talk to them in that channel. Yet there's now data shows that new disruptive insurance companies, they're willing to service these people in those channels as their preferred mode, are getting these new younger people who don't like to talk on the phone, who want to use digital channels. So you still have to do everything. And that's the real struggle, is that we're not organized. Those silos are not designed to nimbly attack a rapidly changing omnichannel world. We're getting new channels all the time.
You mentioned efficiency, the digital efficiency. I still find a lot of technology vendors go in with an efficiency, back office focus, right? Let's move you to the cloud. Well, moving to the cloud is not digital transformation, right? Unless your business processes, unless the whole experience changes.
Exactly. Yep.
Why do customers buy into some of that where, oh yeah, if I move to the cloud, I'm somehow magically going to have a lot of transformation?
Well, I think it's approachable. It seems much more doable. To take something you already have and make it faster, cheaper, better, right? So that's an easy sell. Except in a lot of businesses, we've long since gotten to the point where you automated that and made it as fast and cheap as you possibly can, right? So now what do you do? And there really is this mindset problem. An efficiency play has in the IT industry, historically, around a 70% success rate, a high success rate. A lot of businesses don't even like the 70%; they want 100%, but that's just not reality.
Yeah.
But when you do an innovation play, what the data shows us from the venture capital industry, only 1 in 10 of your efforts are going to succeed. You have a 10% success rate. So that's why VCs overshoot. They say, well, if I want to make sure I hit success, I have to invest 10 times to get one big winner. That's a non-starter. That's a much riskier proposition. So innovation is, simply put, much riskier because it involves so many unknowns and so many variables that you can't get the answers for until you do it. So efficiency is easier to sell. It's lower risk. It's more understandable, and people can get their arms around it. Innovation is absolutely riskier, and you have to have a different investment mindset entirely. And so try to go to the CFO with an innovation play and you tell them that you have a 10% success rate, you will not get that. You will not get those funding.
So Dion, how are you advising clients? Because you don't want them to be too risk averse, right? On the other hand, there's a reality check. So how are you advising them in terms of digital transformation? Who is the
answer? Also, yeah, and we've talked for years about incubators and other ways of saying give a team a pot of money and then they can experiment a lot, and the failed experiments can be kind of hidden inside the incubator, right? And the problem is the incubator is too far away from the business. It's not connected to the board necessarily, so it doesn't have the full resources of the organization or the full resources of the brand. So incubators still have a high failure rate. And so what's interesting is Paul Graham, the famous venture capitalist, used to give companies $5 million and see if what they could create. That's right, he would fund them. And they realized that they were still getting a lot of them never even finished or built anything. So they did a test. They tried to only give them $500,000. And they had better results. They had better results by giving them less money. And it helped that it was easier to develop things in the cloud. By that time, you had the cloud. You didn't have to buy nearly the infrastructure. You didn't have to create a data center. And that trend continued. A few years later, they famously only gave their startups 50,000. They said, if you can't create something with 50,000, you're probably never going to create anything. And they had a higher success rate with less money. And so what we've learned is innovation doesn't necessarily have to be expensive. You have to take risks, but they're inexpensive risks compared to how we had to do things 20 years ago. All of our senior executives are from that world where, hey, everything must cost, $5, $10, $20 million to have a meaningful innovation. That's just not the case anymore. You can low code and cloud and all these things allow you to create a hyperscaler. Like WhatsApp famously had 50 employees when they sold for $19 billion. They had hundreds of millions of customers. They sold for $19 billion. They had 50 employees. It just shows you how little you need to create value, in this hyperscaler world. So we have to think about.
You mentioned incubators. What other tools have you seen that people have used successfully?
So here's all the avenues I've seen big companies try to digitally transform. They try and partner together. So they try and divide the risk up. They say, if we have so much risk, let's spread it out and let's tackle something together. We're in different geographies, so it's okay. So I've seen these consortiums and these innovation groups come together.
And there's no anti-collusion concerns?
Well, not generally, right? Consortiums happen all the time in the tech business, and that's hardly ever comes up, right? But it's also happened in healthcare, especially in other places. And there's a lot of great stuff in healthcare where companies have come together to do something. The different hospital networks and things like that. Another approach used to be to buy startups, but now that's become way too expensive for the average company because that hyperscaler potential, the valuations, they're unicorns and decacorns almost immediately. That's too expensive. So we're seeing companies invest in startups. They say, well, if it's too expensive, let's get in earlier. And they're creating their own venture funds. And they're, like if you look at SAP Ventures and all the things that they're doing, they're kind of doing it. They're a tech company, admittedly, but I have a hospital I work with up in Wisconsin, one of the biggest health networks there, and they routinely invest in startups for preventative medicine. Because it's not very regulated and has a high chance of success. And it's all this home health monitoring tools for diabetes and your weight and all these other things, and it's very successful. And because they're like, we don't know how to build these things, we don't know the technologies, but if we if we invest in people who have a bunch of great ideas, we can get these things to market much quicker. And that's a really successful model, because if it fails, that's somebody else failing, right? That's your investment, which everyone understands. If you're a venture investor, you're taking risks. That does seem to be well understood. And then we do see people funding digital transformation centers of excellence. Or having very big centers of excellence around something like data or analytics or IoT or something like that. So and a lot of if it's specific to a technology, it's usually not as big. But these digital transformation projects are happening inside of companies, but they have been going slowly until the pandemic. They have been pondering along for the last 5 years. I've been surveying CIOs, and they're not reporting major increases in maturity. They're all saying we're not at the beginning, we're really getting going, but we haven't hit our stride yet. That's over half are at that step, and have been for 5 years.
You mentioned the healthcare product. I've always wondered why companies, smart products, technology embedded in them, software embedded in them, and so on, would seem like a logical first step for a number of companies, and yet a number of them haven't done that. To me, another one is new channels, right? New business models. It just seems like companies still aren't, just haven't done much in either area.
I can tell you two quick stories, and it shows you the mindset. I went into one of the top retailers in the nation. I was hired to help advise on the digital transformation strategy. And the guy who's in charge of it was head of the brick and mortar, because they were like, this has got to happen right in the stores. It has to be converged, the digital and bricks and mortar. I can order it online and pick it up in the store, all that. And the guy says, I don't like this digital stuff. I came in because families would come in here and we would make them happy. We would give them the things that they wanted, and that was what was satisfying to us. We loved, I was happy people. I don't care. I can't see my customer across this digital channel. I don't know. I can't read their face. I can't see their body language. I can't figure out what's making them happy or not. I can't service them, and I get no satisfaction from that. I'm not interested in this digital stuff. You guys keep shoving it down my throat. And then I had another story where I was brought into the board of a large medical association, one of the biggest in the world. And I was there to try and convince them about digital transformation. And I got finished, and immediately a big argument broke out into two camps. One camp was, we are about taking care of humans. We're in the healthcare business. We are not technologists, and we don't want to be technologists. And the other half says, but this is the future. We can service our patients so much better. There's all these great things. So there's half of them only cared about their original business, and the other half saw that they had to be in the future, but they became vapor-locked. They never, to this day, have not done anything, any major movement, even though they're younger. Doctors don't want their big heavy books anymore. They want to be in a community. None of those things are available to them. And so it's the biggest challenge with digital transformation is people. It's us. We've got to change too. And that's the problem.
You remind me of the retail example. So I was in a big brand store, and I happened to see a product, and I thought it was too expensive. So I looked up their website, and the digital price was much lower. So I walked up to the register and said, match this. Oh, we can't do this. They call the manager. The manager looks at me and goes, that's my competition. You want it? Go order from my web store. She actually told me that.
It's a different division. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Let's talk about service providers. What are you seeing in terms of companies? Are they doing it themselves? Are they bringing in bigger firms? Because I've seen a little bit, but tell me your perspective, and then I'll tell you mine.
They usually have a few of their own leaders doing it, but they don't have the skill set, and they also can't hire the talent because the talent market's been sucked out. And service providers have an advantage because they can move these young people from project to project to project. I don't know if you've ever been on an IT project, but I used to be on the other side. I was in IT for 20 years. And these projects go on for years, and then they go into maintenance mode, and you're the guy who's running that. And they don't usually move you on to the new hot project because they don't want anything to happen to that. So your life is kind of boring. You get one project every 5 years. So the service providers are the ones that have these big captive talent pools, like Accenture. I talked to them. They're at 600,000 workers now. They plan on being 2 million by 2030. They don't even know if they want to be that big, but they said that we have the captive audience. We have the exciting portfolio of projects. These young people come in and they go and they see all these different things, all these different companies, and it's much more exciting, and they work on the latest cutting edge skills. They're not lying fallow in an IT department that moves very slowly. So I talked to a CIO of a big insurance company last year. He says, our biggest problem is even the service providers are building the talent base fast enough for me to transform enough. They were going to Google Cloud, and they couldn't find anyone that to take their primary insurance products into Google Cloud. They needed about 300 people over the next 2 years, they estimated. And after that, they can jettison. So it's a very effective way of doing that, and they can move on to the next project. They couldn't find a service provider that had 300 people or anywhere close available to transform their products. So,
what I'm seeing is from a strategy perspective, I'm seeing some new entrants in the form of strategy firms. So I'm seeing the McKinseys, the Bains, the BCGs actually help people with the digital strategy, not necessarily the next few steps. And I see Accenture there, but I don't see a lot of the other big IT firms in the strategy area. Just like you would say, saying.
Oh, they all say they do, but they have a very thin bench, very thin.
Right. So that's one. The moving to the cloud, you're right. I'm seeing more Google itself offer to do that, right? Or Microsoft itself subcontract with folks to do that. That's happening. I still see service providers a little too dependent on, hey, what's Salesforce doing? What's SAP doing? They want to chase after what's already been sold rather than creatively come in and challenge customers. So I don't know, maybe I'm seeing a narrow view of those, but I have been not as impressed with the service providers when it comes to big, impactful digital transformations. Maybe I'm being unfair.
No, I don't think you're being that unfair. I think part of it is what we talked about already is, only about 15% of enterprise workloads are on the cloud. Most of the work is in front of us. So you can build a massive practice around just simple cloud migration. And that's easier and lower risk. So, but the deals aren't as big. A big digital transformation deal, that can be enormous, but those are fewer and far between. So it's only the most mature. Accenture is one of them. I also see McKinsey has really changed in the last 5 years. They're not just really high-end strategy, but they're now also into actually building the capability.
They acquired an artificial intelligence firm, so they've done a couple of pretty impressive projects. Yeah. Yeah.
So they're having some success. I think BCG and Bain also have some practices there, but I'm not hearing. I have not run into a customer who's working with BCG and Bain on major digital transformation. I have a McKinsey, I have an Accenture, Deloitte. Digital is actually doing quite well as well.
So, one of my fears has been, I was at Gartner when re-engineering was a big thing, right? Mid-90s, Michael Hammer's re-engineering. And around 97, 98, I suddenly saw this switch go off where they were like, oh my God, this is taking too long. Why don't we just take a package solution and declare success? So yes. I worry that digital transformation is waiting for a similar, let's buy something packaged. This thing is taking too long. What do you think? Is my fear?
I think it's old as new again, Vinnie. Absolutely. So I have this product category, and anyone watching can look for it. I call it digital transformation target platforms, because there's a big lack. You can't give someone AWS and a bunch of AI tools and a bunch of IoT technology and say, go digitally transform. They're like, we don't have any expertise in any of this, really. We've also never engaged in a successful transformation before. And so what's emerging now on the list is a list of the big cloud providers and the companies that do provide the blueprints and the templates and all of the process frameworks and the roadmap, which order to do it, how to figure out what the right order to do all of this is, how do you build out the talent, and then say, here's where you put in things like, maybe blockchain, or here's how you put, all of those, where all that goes in, because they've done it before, and they've done it quite a few times before now. So yes, the risk is we're getting these cookie cutter solutions. Everyone's, buying Microsoft 365. And there's not anything wrong with it, except it has widely varying quality in it, right? Some of the products are quite good, and some of them are, well, you can certainly buy something better. And so, but everyone's making, so many CIOs I talked to a CIO of one of the largest energy companies in the world, and they said, we're all Microsoft on cloud, right? Whenever possible, till it hurts, we're there. But so is their competition. They're doing the same thing. So we're losing differentiation. It's a monoculture. And that's the risk with cloud in general, is that we're devolving now onto a bunch of monocultures, a couple or three. And that, how do you differentiate? And if you declare success, but then basically your capabilities are the same as everybody else.
What I'm hearing is clearly they've moved the back office, finance, HR, procurement to the cloud. They moved elements of CRM to the cloud, right? But the vertical applications, so it could be claims processing and insurance, it could be distance learning in higher education, student administration. They're very unique. There are 2 or 3 books of record in each industry. That's why they can't find any solutions, right? And those are the ones that are very brittle at this point because they've been patched and God knows what all. I mean, healthcare still has MUMS, right? MUMS operating system applications. That to me is is a huge risk for companies. They're trying to do this digital transformation, but they cannot find either talent or solutions that are vertically competent. And
yep. Well, I am seeing more and more blueprinting of finance. I have this one company that I think High Radius, where they're process mine everything, and have built best of breed financial processes that are just ready to go out of the box, and you can just customize it. So process mining is starting to really pay off, but for vendors more than customers. It's so funny, right? So because vendors have a better vantage point. By the way, I ask companies like that, how can they do that with their customers' IP? And they say, well, you can do it. You can now firewall it. The thing that's interesting to me is now we're heading into this world. I don't know if you've heard about GPT-3, where AI can actually write code, and you just describe what you need it to do, and it keeps writing the code and testing it until it's delivered the optimal solution, right? And you say, give me some humans to test it against, and I'll give you the best. That's actually starting to happen. Microsoft's made a big investment in AI code generation, and they licensed GPT-3 to do that. That's on the vanguard, but that has major promise to bring differentiation back. Everyone can have their own trained AI generating a lot of their IT. That's like with AI ops, that's the future.
That's another issue I find with service providers. You said Accenture one may end up being 2 million people. I've beat on them. I came from Pricewaterhouse. I've beaten on them for 20 years now. It's like, guys, the quality is inconsistent from person to person. Your recruiting is a huge headache. Why don't you automate more? They just don't automate their own stuff enough. So that is a continuing issue. Hopefully.
I think that's with things like RPA, where you can actually just show a robot how somebody does the work, and then it tries to do it, and then you teach it where it did it wrong, and so boom, now it's doing the work. Observable AI type of stuff is just, it's amazing to me. And this, we're still in the very crude cave painting days of that. But you can see where it's going to go. So I think we'll get a lot more automation. The problem is can you keep your rates high? I have this big argument. I have a big research paper on the future of professional services. My concern is they don't know how to sell value-based deals. They should be able to go in, I can still charge you $10 million for this, even though instead of 50 people, I'm doing it with 5 people and a bunch of AI. That's why they still want to have the people, because of the billable rates. They can show you the whole cost model, and it makes sense because there's so many people. So that's the real challenge. We have to get to a value-based model.
And in fairness, procurement people in most big companies want to see rate per hour, right? They don't want to see even though they're getting a fixed price, they want to see, show me the elements so I can negotiate down at that micro level. And that's both sides need to evolve. But the good news is I'm seeing more and more. I wrote a book for a CEO on servitization, how product companies are learning to transform, sell more services, right? More outcome-based models, more predictive maintenance, very different field service, and so on. So, yeah, this promise. What else? Final thoughts, Dan?
So is digital transformation fatigue upon us? A little bit. I think that the enormity of it is still giving people pause. They're not aware. Awareness of alternative approaches is still low, and I still feel a lot of CIOs, especially in mid-level, mid-sized companies, are more order takers than they are leaders, and so and actually technology adoption is very uneven. So like we talked about, most people still don't have their core systems on the cloud yet. So there's still just a lot of fundamentals that have to happen, but everything is speeding up. That's what we're seeing and we're seeing that the ones that are lagging the most are literally the ones that will be driven out of business. They're not surviving. Our CEO Ray Wang says most of the Fortune 500 companies in the year 2000 are gone, and technology is the primary cause. There's many causes, but it's failure to adapt to tech. So everyone's got to up their tech intensity, but I'm really encouraged that there is now this new Last year I was giving a keynote at the Google CIO Summit, and afterwards all the questions were about low code from CIOs. I'd never had that happen before because they want to do much more faster and cheaper, and the pandemic made them really forced to do that. So there's a path forward. It's humans are the ones that are the slowest and hardest to change. The tech is easy to change in comparison. It's the humans. And so I am seeing breakthroughs in changing ourselves too. So everything from mindfulness to, I see like digital adoption platforms help people learn in the flow experientially right while they use their IT. And it's helping people use more technology and more apps more effectively in the shortest amount of time. And digital education is phenomenal. People can learn and have sources of learning so much easier than before. You can watch a YouTube video to do anything, these days, and people are. So I'm encouraged, but it's going to take time.
Dan, I'm so excited. You've talked about process mining. You've talked about low code. You talked about, this is inspirational stuff. I mean, like you say, it may take a few years, but I'm glad people are thinking differently.
Yeah, exactly right. So I've been in this business a long time, Vinnie, and I think it's the most exciting time, but it is also truly the most challenging time. So, we got to work it out.
Diane, I'm looking forward to your peeking in your carry bag. I'm always jealous when I look at it, and look forward to some videos of your twins.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'll make sure you get some.
Thank you.
Thank you.